always watching out for you. This is KOAA News 5 Special Edition.
Hello and welcome to this special You Are Not Alone edition of News 5. Southern Colorado has a large military presence between the Air Force Academy, Cheyenne Mountain Air Station, Fort Carson, Peterson and Schriever Space Force bases. Tens of thousands of service members and their families live in our community. And on top of that, more than 53,000 veterans call Colorado Springs home. Many of those in our community served overseas in Afghanistan over the last 20 years. So during the controversial withdrawal of troops from America's longest war, we heard from so many of you questioning your service and the sacrifices your loved ones made. But here at News 5, we want you to know you are not alone. Over the next 30 minutes, you'll see stories from our ongoing project called You Are Not Alone. Stories about mental health resources specifically designed for our military members, as well as stories about hope even after the withdrawal. We begin with the story of one local Afghanistan veteran who says regardless of what he thinks of the U.S. exit, he would do it all again. Our Colette Bordelon has his story.
That's my lucky hat. That's the only thing that survived my explosion.
Senior Master Sergeant Israel Del Toro Jr. was 5 months into his Afghanistan assignment in 2005.
Got hit by an IED. I received third-degree burns on 80% of my body.
After 4 months in a coma, doctors told him he wouldn't be able to walk again or breathe on his own.
I never accepted anything anyone told me my life was going to be.
Instead, he walked out of the hospital in early 2006, but his recovery took almost another 3 years.
It almost feels like, all that blood, sweat, and treasure that we gave up out there, it was just for a participation trophy.
When asked about the Taliban takeover,
it's not the exit that is upsetting, it's the way you did it. And I think there could have been a better way to do it.
He says the word that comes to mind is angry.
That anger can overwhelm some people. That frustration, like I said, that disappointment. And it was like the question, was it worth it?
Those with behavioral health services at Mount Carmel tell us they've had at least one veteran call saying the withdrawal of U.S. forces from Afghanistan has been triggering mental health issues.
Some of us, like myself, we obviously didn't come back saying we were severely wounded. Some of my teammates never came back. So now those families are probably asking, was it worth losing my loved one for something we were just going to give up on?
Del Toro Jr. remembered when he helped build a school for girls while in Afghanistan, where he says it was the first time those girls could get an education.
What we did, it was worth it. Not only to destroy Al-Qaeda and get the Taliban out of there, but to also see those other good parts of minorities and girls live freely. I got to see that.
Saying he'd do it all again if given the choice.
Watching the images of the Afghanistan withdrawal didn't just affect our service members. It also impacted the loved ones who were left behind during the numerous deployments. I recently spoke to a military mom who lost her son in Afghanistan. Scotty Domey knows the pain of losing a child.
He's the most deployed soldier in American history to be killed in action.
Her son, Army Ranger Sergeant First Class Christopher Domey, was killed in Afghanistan in 2011.
He was the Army's first evaluator JTAC.
She told me about the moment she found out her son was gone.
It was about midnight, and I hear this banging in my door. Well, I'm single. I'm not going to open my door. And they wouldn't quit banging. And I mean, it was insistent. It did not stop for 20 minutes. So then I thought, I'm going to call the cops. Right. But my cell phone was in this room, and I'd have to walk past the front door, and they could see me. So then I peeked out, and I noticed uniforms. Then I got mad. I thought, why are the cops here? I haven't done anything. Then I went down the stairs, opened the door, knew, and I said, is my son dead? And they came in, and they said, may we come in, ma'am? So as we were walking up the steps, I said, is my son dead? Of course I knew my son was dead. And then, they were really, honestly, okay, I felt sorry for them having to deliver the news because they still had 2 more people to inform that night.
her deep Christian faith carrying her through the dark days and nights since then.
I also believe what the Bible says, that 2 days belong to God, the day we're born and the day we die. And God chose his death date. Now, we've had some conversations about that.
You and God?
Yeah, oh yeah. About, it was way too short. But because of my faith, I accept that.
She accepts that and spends little time asking why.
Even if God told me why, I still am going to grieve and mourn, feel the pain, and miss him for the rest of my life. Why is like this vortex that it just takes you deeper and deeper into the darkness. And I thought, no, not going to allow that.
Now, as she watches the images on her television screen, she's worried the families in Afghanistan, now back under Taliban rule, will know her same pain.
I'm bonded in grief to all the people in Iraq, in Afghanistan, when ISIS did their thing. My son's death was a violent death, but many of those children and wives will see that violent death. So I'm grieving for them.
Sergeant Domey was going after one of the most prolific IED makers when he was killed by an IED.
He was basically blowing up about 200 people a month. I really wanted to beg the generals to let me fly to Afghanistan and share my faith with him. Of course, I knew they'd never let me do that. Then a year later, I found out he had been killed, but I felt ill because he has a family. He didn't know another way in life.
But his way took your son.
Right, he did. And even if they're enemy, they have families that grieve for them.
Wow, Mrs. Domey has remarkable forgiveness. The ending of America's longest war has left so many veterans with a lot of mixed emotions, but we want you to know you are not alone. And even if you've never served, you can still show your support. Dwayne France, a therapist and program director for Veteran Services at the Family Care Center in Colorado Springs, offered his insight. He has served in Afghanistan, and he relates directly with anyone who has served. He says the post-war conversation among vets is, how can we help our brothers now that the war has ended? For those of you who have not served, this can be a challenge because some family members and friends just don't know how to approach their veteran. Dwayne says listening is the biggest thing we can do to show our support.
First things is to be respectful, right? To just be patient and kind. It may take a couple of different times letting a veteran know that you want to hear about what happened or you want to ask them to share as much as they want to. Understanding that maybe sometimes they won't, right? That sometimes they won't talk about, not because they don't want to talk to you about it, but because they want to spare someone from some of the distress that they're feeling.
Dwayne last served about 10 years ago. He says the conversation on mental health in the military is changing. He says when the war started, many of those serving thought they should suck it up. Well, today he says vets are more willing to get the help they need. For some veterans, peer-to-peer support might be more beneficial than just speaking to a counselor, and that's where the idea for a free app called Objective Zero started. 2 U.S. Army veterans created it while they were stationed here at Fort Carson. As our Ashley Portillo reports, the idea for the app came from their own experience.
In the early hours of the morning in July 2015,
I was sitting on the edge of the bed with a pistol in my hand and I was ready to quit.
That's when 11-year Army veteran Justin Miller gave Chris Mercado a call.
And I just sat there and listened without judging him or trying to solve all of his problems. And I was a little bit, worried.
Mercado also served in the Army for 23 years. And the 6-hour-long phone call between the two saved Miller's life and is the inspiration behind Objective Zero.
Is using technology to combat suicide in our military community amongst our active duty service members, reserves, National Guardsmen, our veterans.
Objective Zero is a free app anyone can download on their phone. It connects users to a nationwide support group and mental health resources.
And we're accomplishing that by connecting them to 24/7 peer support through voice, video, or text message.
Users can pick up the phone at any time of the day and get help just like Miller did.
I was in such a bad spot that all I cared about was making it through the night. And I didn't believe I had a story.
But Miller's story has helped so many others. including the nearly 10,000 app users last year.
And that's when it really set in, like, wow, we have survived now going on, 5 years saving lives.
The main goal of Objective Zero is helping prevent the nearly 20 suicides among veterans each day and letting them know they are not alone.
Because if we don't come together as a nation, we're never going to solve this problem.
Just be there and be willing to listen. And sometimes that's all it takes to make a difference in someone's life.
That's all it takes. Still ahead, one local Afghanistan veteran shares his mental health journey and the moment when he knew he needed to reach out for help. Welcome back. Even with all the resources ready to help, sometimes overcoming the stigma around seeking mental health help is the most difficult step. Our Colette Bordelon has a story of one local veteran who speaks candidly about how therapy has helped in his own life. He says even if it encourages one person to reach out, it's worth it.
It's beautiful, it's quiet, it's peaceful.
A moment outside to breathe. Maybe it's something we all need from time to time.
I guess if you kind of look at who you are as a human as like a recipe.
And recipes can be messy.
Emotions are just as important spices as anything else in that recipe.
Former Army EOD Captain Mason Heibel served for 1 month shy of 9 years. And for the most part of his military career, there was always a smile on his face.
When we returned from Afghanistan, probably 3 weeks afterwards, one of my soldiers came up to me and made a comment that stuck. "Sir, what happened to you? You were always the happy one, and now you're the angry one."
It was a struggle that at first he didn't realize was creeping in, eventually reaching a point he couldn't ignore.
Driving to work and knowing that if a vehicle came across the median, and not knowing if I would try to swerve.
With the help of his wife, he began going to therapy twice a week. He was diagnosed with depression, anxiety, and PTSD.
I would say it's like living with an elephant in the room, 24/7. And no matter how familiar you get with that elephant, it's always there. But you can get more comfortable with it, and you can learn to not let it control you.
His journey with mental health got harder before getting easier.
What they don't see is the hours spent crying in a shower, or the hours spent not sleeping and just driving in the mountains because I just can't turn my brain off. And I know if I'm feeling that, other people are feeling that too.
Now his mission, making sure veterans know they're not alone.
I spent years alone in crowds. And I know what that feels like, and it's hard. And you don't have to be alone in a crowd.
Being there for someone else, maybe that's all we really need.
Captain Heibel wanted to mention the work done by the Marcus Institute for Brain Health in Aurora. They have a specialty care for veterans and athletes who have traumatic brain injuries. It's where he saw the benefits of art therapy, a way to communicate things that may be difficult to say. Another Colorado Springs program also helping veterans by getting outside. Wild Warrior Adventure is a week-long program that takes veterans fly fishing across the U.S. The organization gives veterans a space to talk about their emotions, and then they get a chance to go to the water and connect with nature.
When we come back from war, there tends to be this disconnect at times, whether that be associated with effects of combat trauma and post-traumatic stress, that isolation, that inability to get back out into society and engage with other people, especially other veterans. It kind of falls to the wayside.
If you would like to get involved, we have the link for this group on our website, KOAA.com. Coming up next, one local veteran's mission to get his Afghan translator to southern Colorado. Watching the withdrawal from Afghanistan after 20 years of war, one thing we heard from so many veterans: we made a promise to the people of Afghanistan. Also, we heard a lot: how can we help now? Many veterans stepped up by pushing to get those they worked alongside in Afghanistan safely to the U.S. as refugees. I spoke with one local veteran and his translator about the difficult process to get to southern Colorado. We're only sharing his first name to protect his family hiding in Afghanistan.
I have 2 kids. My kids and my wife, my father, mother, they are in danger. My family is in, they are living secret in a place.
Living in secret, you're saying? They're in
Yeah.
hiding.
Yeah, they are hiding.
This man escaped Afghanistan thanks to his work with NATO and the U.S. military, and one very determined retired Air Force combat veteran.
It's been difficult. Masi has had a long trip. He went to, I believe it was Qatar, and then he was in Indianapolis, and now he's in Buffalo. And we're trying to get him here to Colorado Springs.
Mike Crandall says he may not be here if it wasn't for interpreters like Masi and Masi's brother, who also escaped.
They took care of me when I was in combat zone, and now it's my turn to take care of them.
They took care of you in some extraordinary ways. Masi's brother was your interpreter and someone you had to rely on in some of the most dangerous situations. Tell me about that.
That's right. The interpreters in Afghanistan were the difference between life and death a lot of the times, because they could give us the true information of what's being told.
That's why he's willing to do whatever it takes to help get them and their families to the U.S.
These are people we made promises to. The U.S. government made promises that if you work with us, we will take care of you and your family. And I think we need to honor that promise.
What will you do when you get to Colorado Springs? What's your goal?
I will start working there, start again my education, then I want to get a good job there. You know, it's my great ambition to see my family again. I want to, you know, that is very difficult if you stay far from your family and they are in danger. It is very difficult for you.
So difficult for so many of them. Whether you served or a loved one served, there are so many emotions and feelings to unpack. And knowing where to turn can be really difficult. At Fort Carson, there are resources to help soldiers or members of their families. Part of that is working to prevent crisis before it happens.
The heightened piece is certainly we have awareness that there's a lot of stresses and there's a lot of triggers in the media right now. And there's a lot of great resources.
Army Community Service, or ACS, is not a crisis counseling center, but there are resources to help avoid crisis. And if someone appears in trouble, the crews at ACS know who is best qualified to help.
I think the biggest piece is that individuals are not alone in this. Lots of people have had similar reactions.
Solutions are not limited to counseling. ACS helps with seemingly simple things like playgroups for children. It's a break for parents, also support for them. Here at News 5, we want our community to know there are so many resources available for our active duty and military veterans in southern Colorado. It can be tough to figure out which one would be best to help with your individual needs. Homefront Military Network is that middleman. The organization connects military members and their families to trusted resources in our community. The network can assist financially with rent, utilities, medical needs, even transportation.
It's okay not to be okay. It's absolutely okay not to be okay. This is the last year and a half with this pandemic has added challenges and trauma upon trauma. And, you know, as we've been saying for a long time, the global war on terror has been long-term and multi-generational. The veterans who've served have been affected, their family members have been affected, and it's not going away today or tomorrow, regardless of when their service happened.
Remember, active duty veterans, family members, you are not alone. There are several resources available to help you right now on our website. Just go to KOAA veterans.com. Click the You Are Not Alone tab. It's right at the top of the website. And there you will see a list of helplines like the National Suicide Prevention Hotline and the Veterans Crisis Line. Both numbers are staffed 24/7. They also have texting options. There's a number for Mount Carmel Veterans Service Center and a link to their website where you can book counseling services, join support groups, and even sign up to attend retreats. We thank you so much for watching this special You Are Not Alone edition of News 5. I'm Diane Derby.